Have you felt your plans yanked by weather you did not cause? The date that rewrites rules mid-conversation? The office that praises initiative at noon and punishes it by dusk? The platform that turns yesterday's virtue into today's offense? The paycheck that vanishes the week you finally breathe? Have you tasted the helplessness of doing things right and still watching the river jump its banks? The loneliness of knowing you are strong but never on time? Niccolò Machiavelli names this weather fortune. In The Prince, he throws a brutal line into history. Fortune is a woman, and to keep her in order, she must be beaten and roughly handled. Take the metaphor, not the violence. Machiavelli is not licensing harm to women. He is indicting passivity before chaos. His point is stark. If you let contingency seduce you into softness, you will be carried. If you meet chaos with a governed force, you will bend it. The task is not anger. The task is strategy that treats the world as it is. Machiavelli's image is a floodplain. Fortune is the torrent that sometimes meanders, sometimes smashes dikes. In quiet seasons, men congratulate themselves on prudence they did not need. In violent seasons, they curse the sky and call it fate. The Prince says the wise man accepts that the river will rise. He also builds banks while the sun is out. Translating the offensive line about beating fortune means this: you apply pressure to contingency before contingency applies pressure to you. You seize initiative, not people. You discipline your environment, not a scapegoat. When fortune surges, your house does not beg. Start with how you talk. Men who treat chaos as romance narrate their drift as fate. Machiavelli wants uglier verbs. He wants to hear where you fortified, where you cut, where you closed the second door, where you stacked wood, because winter does not care that you meant well. He wants you to name the river's pattern in your life, the month your industry always tightens, the mood that always ruins the third date, the algorithm that always flips your reach, the family week that always tugs you off plan. Fortune is not mystical when you map her cycles and deny her the comfort of surprise. Then consider stance. Passive men ask for calmer weather. Strategic men lower their center of gravity. You reduce exposed surfaces. You simplify the promises you allow strangers to hold. You rearrange the furniture of your day so that a single outage does not black out the house. You are done being a grand piano on casters. You become bolted steel. Machiavelli's misogynist phrasing is a product of his century, and it must be named as such. Keep it in quotation marks and keep the lesson. Do not harm. Do not excuse harm. Do not let the offense of his metaphor spare you from learning why your life keeps breaking when the river rises. He is telling you that weather respects walls, not wishes. So admit where you prefer to feel unlucky rather than unprepared. Admit where your hope has become a style. Admit the way you use eloquence to seduce yourself into delay. The allegory gives you cover to be honest, because it gives you an enemy big enough to blame until you realize the enemy is your absence of strategy. Once you see that, you can stop flattering fortune with poems and start drawing the ground plan of a life that can carry weight. The hour for flattery is over. You are building a house on a floodplain. Raise the floor. Choose materials that do not weep. Bring the ugliness of sandbags into your aesthetic. Fortune will come. She will be loud and unfair. Welcome to reality. You do not need calmer water. You need better banks. Preparation is not paranoia. It is how love survives weather. Machiavelli's Italy survived by walls, supplies, and routes of retreat. Your life will survive by equivalents that are less romantic than all caps inspiration and more masculine than moods. You build redundancies because fortune is a vandal. You refuse to be a single point of failure because people you care about live downstream from your choices. Start with income that the river cannot drown in one surge. You are not trying to become a brand. You are building channels. You make yourself transferable. Skills that travel when titles expire. Clients that hire you for outcomes, not for office gossip. A reputation that locks before crises, so that crises confirm it, rather than contest it. The Prince calls this virtue, the capacity to shape circumstances. Modern virtue is visible in the boring ledger. Reserves when the contract breaks. A modest life so choices are not mortgaged to strangers. Paperwork in order, so panic cannot use bureaucracy as a weapon. Build social fortifications without becoming a supplicant. Allies are not audiences. You invest before you need. You repay quickly and without theatre. You introduce people who should know each other without collecting a fee of gratitude. Then, when fortune slaps a room, the room pulls you inside because you are already woven in. Machiavelli understood reputation as armor that must be hammered in peacetime. You are done waiting for crisis to convince you to be reliable. Fortify your body, not to worship it, but to give your will a vehicle. When the river rises, it asks whether you can carry sand and sleep little without turning cruel. Training is emergency rehearsal. The Prince would not have confused aesthetics with readiness. He would have told you to eat like someone other than fortune is in charge, and to rest like you intend to be useful next week. Your tenderness will fail without strength. Your gentleness will become apology if your hands cannot lift. Fortify your calendar. Men who are ruled by openings never arrive where they meant to go. Block hours that belong to your aim. When fortune rips a day from you, the pattern holds, because the pattern is written in ink. Strategy is not magic. It is the boring stubbornness of returning to the same room at the same time, to do the same work, so that when an opening appears, your skill is not theoretical. Finally, fortify your conscience. Weather tempts shortcuts that turn victories into liabilities. Decide in clear weather which lines you refuse to cross in storms. Machiavelli is caricatured as cynical, but his hardest counsel is prudence. Cruelties well used are restraints with a purpose that end, not indulgences that metastasize. Translate that into your life as boundaries that defend goods, not tantrums that prove masculinity. A fortified man does not need to act monstrous to avoid being moved. He is hard to move because he cared early in ways nobody could see. Call this love with a spine. The people around you do not need your speeches about fortune. They need your house to hold when the river decides to test your carpentry. Fortune does not only flood, she trips. Openings appear when other men are blinking. Machiavelli calls those instants occasion. You cannot schedule them, but you can be the kind of man who recognizes their profile and moves at the right tempo. Emotional men require ceremony to act. Strategic men accumulate small advantages quietly, so that when the hinge moment arrives, they look fast rather than frantic. Begin by scouting, not surveillance. Attention. You map incentives as if they were terrain. You learn who actually decides in your office and what their true currency is. You notice which hours your partner's patience is deepest and aim important conversations there. You study the cadence of your market so you are not stunned by its winter. Then, when a competitor missteps or a role opens or a silence softens, you do not convene a jury. You step. Tempo is the pulse you impose on a situation. If the room is rushing, slow it to force thinking. If the room is stuck, accelerate to force commitment. Fortune loves a man who adopts the room's tempo without question. The prince wants you to be the metronome. In romance, this looks like proposing a time and place with a plan that respects the other person's constraints without groveling before them. In conflict, it looks like offering the resolution that costs you something and costs the other side the chaos they are addicted to. You move the scene forward. You do not perform your feelings inside it. Seizing occasion means tolerating imperfection. Machiavelli had no illusions that clean hands win cities. The question is always whether the mark on your hand buys something worth owning, and whether that mark will keep bleeding. In your life, this means living with small misunderstandings that purchase large clarity. It means accepting reputational risk proportionate to the gain, rather than demanding unanimous consent before you cross a bridge that will be gone at sundown. Beware consultation as theatre. When you already know the move, asking for permission becomes a ritual that comforts fear and sells timing to fortune at a discount. Ask counsel early when it shapes design. Do not ask counsel late as a way to outsource responsibility. The river respects men who will own their velocity. Finally, protect the gains. Fortune punishes the man who confuses a breakthrough with a regime. You do not build a palace on a temporary sandbar. You extract, consolidate, and retreat to stone. You harvest a windfall into a system that can repeat without heroics. Tempo then cycles from sprint to sustain. Occasion belongs to men who move, and it stays with men who know when to stop moving and let what they built harden. Fortune favors audacity that has been practicing for months. The world will call your timing lucky. Smile. Luck is what the unprepared call other men's discipline. Machiavelli is ruthless about appearances. People judge more by eyes than by hands. They want a story to hang your actions on, and the story that arrives first often wins. If you despise this, you donate your narrative to fortune. If you master it, you create a windbreak around your work. The prince does not tell you to lie. He tells you to make the visible align with the useful and to keep your private machinery private. Begin with consistency. The same opening move, the same refusal to gossip, the same punctuality, the same boundaries spoken calmly build a legend. Legend is not vanity. It is the shorthand by which others predict you. Fortune can whirl a scandal against a man whose legend is chaos. She struggles to move a man whose legend is clear. If you are always late and then demand to be believed when it matters, you have given fortune the lever she needs. If you are boringly exact, she must work harder and louder to dislodge trust. Use silence as scaffold. Every reputation needs negative space. The modern urge to narrate your every kindness invites weather to argue with it. When you do genuine good in a room with no camera, you are hammering brackets into stone. The day someone lies about your motive, people who saw nothing will still hesitate because the myth of your steadiness is established. The prince loved useful reputation. He built it with deliberate absence as much as with display. Choose symbols. One sentence you always say at the start of meetings. One rule you always enforce first with yourself. One gesture that signals seriousness. People want handles. Give them handles that carry your weight. This is not a brand exercise. It is giving your circle a way to remember your form when fortune is kicking dust. A man whose symbols are clear does not need to shout when storms arrive. Others will do the reminding. Do not pick fights with rumor mills. You starve them with outcomes. You choke them with visible competence. You make territory safer for your people and let the whisperers demonstrate they cannot build shelter. Machiavelli would have smiled at the efficiency of refusing to wrestle pigs. He would have urged you to control the stage rather than argue backstage. Finally, audit your myth for cruelty. The prince approves severity that serves stability, not theatre that serves appetite. If your public hardness is a costume for private insecurity, fortune will wait until you are tired and then unmask you. If your visible force is an honest function of what you protect, the wind will respect it. The story your life tells must be precise enough to deter small storms and generous enough to welcome allies who have something to lose alongside you. Machiavelli's most mangled line measures safety. Better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Translated into a home and a team. It is safer for people to predict your boundaries than to gamble on your desire to be liked. Love without reliability becomes contempt. Fear without justice becomes revolt. The prince's equilibrium is a regime of consequences that are legible, proportionate, and early. Fortune thrives where lines are fuzzy. She struggles where law is firm. In relationships, this means making standards explicit at the start, enforcing them first on yourself, and applying loss without public drama when they are breached. You do not withhold affection to manipulate. You do not issue vague threats. You state what keeps the relationship's roof on, and you hold it as if you mean to live under that roof for decades. People relax near men, whose yes remains yes after tears, and whose no remains no after flattery. Fortune has less to spin when your word does not wobble. In leadership, this means clean penalties sooner, not bigger penalties later. Cruelty well used is Machiavelli's language for decisive pain that ends quickly and prevents chaos. In your context, it looks like removing sabotaging privileges once instead of tolerating them until you explode. It looks like firing fairly rather than threatening forever. It looks like publishing the rule and then obeying it when your favorite breaks it. Fortune harvests from hypocrisy. Deny her crop. Do not bribe love. Gifts that compensate for breached lines train people to breach again. Praise that avoids honest feedback breeds fragility that fortune can weaponize against you on the day you finally speak. The prince's love is respect. It grows in the shade of laws that keep everyone's effort from leaking. Make the laws short. Make them public. Make them survivable so that people can stay and grow after they have paid. Yes, you will be called harsh by those who used your softness as leverage. Hold the line without glee. Severity that tastes sweet is rot. Severity that tastes like medicine is care. If you are tempted toward cruelty because you are tired, stop. Sleep is part of government. A prince who disciplines exhausted becomes a tyrant by accident. Rest and return with a hand that is firm because it is aimed. When fear and love meet correctly, they resolve into trust. Your children, team, partner, and friends will know you are neither a reed nor a rock that crushes. You are a structure that can carry their weight without begging to be liked for doing so. Fortune can set fires around men like this. She cannot make them evacuate their own house. Machiavelli's final offense is his clarity. He assumes the world will not become fair. He asks whether you will become governable by it. The first state he wants you to rule is the principality behind your ribs. If factions riot there, the city will export its civil war. If councils meet there at set hours, the city will endure what the map throws. Fortune cannot legislate against a man who runs his interior like something worth defending. Write laws for yourself that match the man you claim to be under pressure. Decide in peace the reply you will not send. Decide in peace the drink you will not pour. Decide in peace the bargain you will not sign when panic offers it. Fortune's favorite contract is the one you draft in adrenaline. Refuse by policy, not by mood. Expect failure. Rivers jump banks. You will misread a current and take on water. Princes do not sulk. They triage, repair, repay, and re-enter with better maps. Shame is not a strategy. Neither is pride. You are not building a story about invincibility. You are building a city that can break in places that do not collapse the whole. Finally, practice disappearance. The most dangerous power fortune grants is celebrity. It makes men loud when they should be careful and visible when they should be busy. Step off stages that force you to keep performing your myth at the expense of the work that made it true. Return to rooms where outcomes matter more than applause. Princes who survive become less photogenic and more useful as years accrue. Fortune will always flirt. She will woo you with the high of last-minute rescue, the insult of unfairness, the warm bath of grievance. Smile at her and keep governing. She is chaos in metaphor. You are not her enemy. You are the river's engineer, the city's law, the house's spine. Beat the weather with banks. Roughly handle the current with dams and channels. Treat human beings as ends, not obstacles. Treat the world as a storm you saw coming. If this found you tired of apologizing to weather, write one sentence you will live this week that turns the metaphor into stone. Like this video and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share it to one man who needs a brother more than an audience, and subscribe to stay connected. Build banks before rain. Scout for occasion. Set tempo. Make law gentle and firm. Govern the principality within. Fortune will still come loud. Your house will still stand.